if you would go ahead and mute yourselves, and then if there is questions or things, we'll go ahead and answer those when it's appropriate. I am going to have the chat session here so I can monitor those questions as we go along. Let me bring that back up. All right, and let me go ahead and get started. Okay, so here's what we're going to do today. For this session, this is kind of part of a ongoing lead conversion. We did farming a couple weeks ago, and now we're going to do the email because that's kind of a breakout session. And because I am a kid of the 80s, we have a little bit of a 80s theme going on here. I want to say that we're going to go ahead and start with talking about what email campaigns work and which ones don't. And then we will go into, at the end of this session, we will go into Moxie Engage and talk about the templates we've already set up for you, what you need to do to get those up and running, and the value of that system as it relates to this. So my experience with email campaigns is actually starts before we had social media and some of the other ways to communicate, and they were very, very effective. I mean, they were probably one of the most important parts of my marketing campaign. And then I started jumping into social media when it first started rolling out, and just didn't have time for both. And then blogging became super popular. And basically my email campaigns were nothing more than sharing the blog post on social media, by email. And then we are now coming back to full circle where people are not exactly looking at blogs anymore. We don't blog, we don't have RSS feeds and those type of things, but they are getting your newsletters on a routine basis. And it still remains one of the most effective in every industry marketing systems that exist when it's done well. And so I have a email system that I use as a speaker. Right now it's about 9,300 names. All of those have been organic signups from people, and I send on a routine basis. So if you actually are subscribers to that email campaign, and I measure what works and what doesn't. And I like, even after all these years, I'm still kind of fine tuning what does and doesn't work. And so, so we're going to be talking a lot about how that works. I think everybody here knows who I am, so I'm not going to spend, so if you're new to the company, I'm Matthew, and my job here is to make sure you're equipped and ready for whatever business tool for real estate that you want to use. So let's talk about what our mission here. We're going to talk about three things. We're going to talk about the value of email campaigns. We're going to talk about how to design effective ones, and then how to manage them in the Moxie system at the end. That's the three goals I want to get through at the end here. And then we'll talk quickly about the efficacy of these things. So 36% of email recipients will open a general email. In other words, an email from you where you're sending it out and just saying, hey, this is my monthly email campaign, and boom, here you are. 49% will open it if it has any relevance to them as a person or to the local interests that they have in their region. And 60% of consumers follow an email call to action when they're ready to buy or sell. And I think these are important numbers as we start to talk about segmentation of content and how we get people to sign up. Because again, I hear a lot of you sharing on a routine basis, like, no one's opening my emails, or I don't know if they're working, I never get any leads from it, I don't get any results from it. And it isn't necessarily going to be the fault of the marketing technique, but rather the execution of the marketing technique. Because I'm an inbox zero guy. I think infamously, we've talked about this in a lot of our training, and a lot of people kind of give me pushback and hate for that because it's just one more thing and maybe it's over the top. But being an inbox zero guy means I really am quick to unsubscribe to things. Like, if I didn't intentionally sign up for it, or if it's not going to build my business or give me information I could not have found anywhere else, I will 100% unsubscribe to it. And there's been a number of newsletters over time that I have subscribed to, thinking it was going to be valuable, and maybe it was for a few months, and then you could see that the author just kind of gave up on at least me as a target audience, or the information didn't relate to me and I unsubscribed. So I've been watching not only how people respond to the emails I send, but also how I behave and how I respond to emails. And some of it is just junk and just spam. But when it's properly executed by segment, we get a 760% return on investment with segmented lists. And what that means is if I'm on your email list, I'm a past client of yours, right? We've done business together and you helped me close a transaction. We know that NAR tells us 89% of consumers definitely or probably will use their agent again in the future, but only 12% actually do. And when we look at those numbers and we break them down and we do all the stuff that the marketing world does to assess efficacy of a tool, we realize that generally speaking, the consumer the agent either A, did not continue a relationship in a meaningful way with the consumer, or B, the consumer moved out of the area, which accounts for those two numbers. And really that's it. So the email becomes a way to have a meaningful relationship with them after the transaction. And for people who are early on in the process of buying or selling, may subscribe to an email and then unsubscribe later when they have either chosen their champion or have elected to not buy or sell at the moment. And because of that, we tend to see a lot of burn in the real estate industry. Now, as I have shared in a lot of other classes, I believe in lifestyle marketing very heavily. I believe in the hub and spoke system very heavily. And that means that I am going to have a segmented list, not of just buyers or sellers or FSBOs or investors, but rather of the people. And so that means that some of these consumers may actually be part of 2 or 3 or 4 email campaigns, depending on where they are on their adventure, where they are in their what we call client journey. And when we talk about the consumer focused element, we're talking about segmentation, and consumer focused element is to go back to our brand and back to our consumer personas that we have talked about. And a lot of agents focus on Billy the buyer or Sydney the seller or Carson the consumer, in general about real estate all the time. But look, here's the thing. I may not be thinking about buying and selling all the time. And so if I just close a transaction with you, what I don't need is a bunch of emails over the next 3 years about how to get ready to buy a home. I just bought the home. If I'm thinking about selling a home, what I don't need is a 3,000 email just rush of content about the 10 things I need to get ready to sell my home, but rather I am a consumer and consumers want to know about opportunities and investments and what's going on in the world around us. And so I may have a consumer persona where I put out our client persona, where knowing who I want to reach means identifying content that they're going to listen to on a daily basis, or in this case, a monthly basis. And just to say, when we talk about frequency also comes back to who this consumer persona is. If I know of someone who is getting ready to sell their home as a for sale by owner, urgency is important, and I got to get as much content as I'm in front of them as I can over the next 30 days, because the average FSBO ends up listing with an agent within 30 days of attempting the FSBO process themselves. If I have a buyer, I know that they have an 18 to 24-month journey that I need to address. That is going to be both what's going on in the community and what information can I give you as an agent that you could not find readily or easily in other places? And how do I solve problems you didn't know you had? And so those are segments that people would belong to. And again, I could have different segments and different email campaigns to address those consumers. And when we get a little further in this part, we're going to talk about what creative ways we can have to continue to engage consumers where they are. As opposed to just having just buyer, just seller content all the time. And yes, and I meant to preface it with this beginning of this class, it's going to require some work. There's just no way about it. I'm going to give you some hacks and some cheats and some other things, but automated content, the content that Liv can create or I can create that we provide to you through Moxie Engage, is primarily for the segmentation of a buyer or a seller. The content that needs to be created, that would be incumbent on you to create, is going to be that consumer content. And it may be a consumer who is 55 and older. It may be a consumer who is first-time or young families, rather. It could be people in between. It could be empty nesters. Those are different segmentations. You'll have to decide in what you want to work. And the question will always be, oh my gosh, how do I build all this content? You don't. You identify who your core client is, because you're not going to have the time, or really most of us, the creativity to reach 20 different segments. And so having a buyer segment, a seller segment, and then everybody else, or you're 55 and older, or you're empty nesters, or you're first time home buyer, or young families rather, is though you may have only have three segments. And we can automate and we can create some content you can easily modify to make your own for buyers and sellers from a generic campaign, which is, for lack of a better term, a generic campaign. What we cannot do is write in your voice, which we'll talk about in just a minute. So you're going to have a couple of different campaigns we're talking about here. One is a newsletter. So newsletter could be about a community. It could be about a lifestyle. It could be about your favorite restaurants in town. It could be about a whole bunch of things we'll talk about when we get to the creative segment. Those are newsletters. They're anticipated. They go out on usually a monthly basis. And then you have drip campaigns. So drip campaigns are going to be this concept of identifying this type of consumer and sending routine emails and a scheduled time that is related to that type of persona, that segmentation. And then you have your general property listings, which can be anybody, because some people just, their hobby is to look at homes for sale, and Zillow is kind of their evening buddy while they're watching their favorite show, and they're not really thinking about selling a home, but they like to know what's going on. And then you can have also obviously your buyer segmentation, where they do want to see your property listings on a routine basis. Marketing updates are market updates. And we have tools for that. Or of course, we have, we'll get into that when we log into Moxie here for a second. But most of your consumers don't want to know what's going on in the market with interest rates and things all the time. And this is one of the things where you see kind of rookie marketers focusing on, where they're sending out, a postcard every month with market statistics, or their social media is just flooded with interest rates are down, and here's what's going on in your market and marketing trends. If the consumer wants that, they typically will be self-driven to go find that information. And really nobody wants that no normal person anyways, wants that every single month. And so those may not be drip campaigns unless they are a segment of a buyer or seller. Your everyday consumer doesn't necessarily think you're valuable to them when you just kind of regurgitate what they're already reading in the news and seeing on the news and getting from 20 other sources. And the last one is event invitations. And so event would not be open houses, right? That's still a marketing campaign that could be in your property listing information, but maybe you're doing something to help out people. Maybe you're talking about getting credit restoration and you're partnering with a lender to do that. And maybe you're doing a client appreciation event. If I'm doing well with these newsletters, primarily, and that's kind of what I'm going to focus on as being one of the most valuable things for you, and a newsletter about life in general and things about my lifestyle that I would digest as a consumer. If you're doing well with that, then you can start throwing in the one-off event invitations to something going on in town. And I would suggest that when you look and think about event invitations, it doesn't always have to be your event. It could be an event you're involved in, or just something you sponsor or support in the area. And this is how we let those followers know in our email campaigns what we're involved in. So if you're doing a fundraiser for St. Jude's, as we tend to do, inviting everybody to attend, even though it's not your specific event, but it's something that they do, shows your involvement. If you're a sponsor for the Fred Nats, you're a sponsor for Shakespeare in the Park, you're a sponsor for a local theater play, or CYT, or one of those types of theater groups, then you can invite them to that event, maybe even find a discount or pay for tickets or whatever you're doing through those event invitations. Above all, we want to talk about not being spam. Spam in general is information that I don't find valuable, right? It's the things that you and I get all the time, and we go, okay, no, this doesn't really relate to me. This is someone's just signed me up for something. I didn't self-select to receive this email. And obviously, a consumer who signs up for something is far more likely to stay engaged with it because they saw value in the first place. And then it's just your trust to keep afterwards. But spam is not just generic emails. Spam is emails that are not effective. Content or information that isn't going to help me solve a life problem or enjoy things more than I have. And so let's talk about what's in the elements of the emails that we're going to be regarding here. So are responding to. First of all, subject line. Subject lines are important. We're going to talk a little bit later about how to draft good subject lines that get attention. Homes for sale in your area, not very exciting. You're not getting a lot of attention. Things going on in Fredericksburg, Maybe. Things going on in Richmond? Maybe, if you're actually providing information about things going on about the community, not things going on about market statistics. Subject line is don't miss this, something that's going to get their attention. And of course, some tools that we'll talk about to help you with those. We're going to talk about the introduction, even if this is somebody who's been on your email subscription list for a while. There's always an introduction of just reminding them who you are and then why you do what you do. And I think this is a kind of an important thing as we talk about engaging our consumer persona. We forget that there's more in people's lives than what's going on in the real estate market, real estate world, because we're in the real estate market and we're in the real estate world. And I saw a post yesterday from an agent who said, I know everybody in the world is wondering right now what's going on with the NAR settlement. Well, most of your consumers have no idea what an NAR settlement is. They may identify with the fact that commission changes are occurring, but they're only paying attention to that if they are actually thinking about buying or selling. And at any given time, there's less than 6% of the people following you on social media or that you engage on a daily basis who are thinking about buying and selling. So that when you go out there on social media, now this is different if you're a broker or trainer, because my audience are real estate agents, but if your audience are consumers and you're going to go out there and pontificate on stuff going on in the industry, that's not good content for them because only 6% are paying any attention. What is good content for them is to know why you do what you do and that you're their guide in the community. And we go back to our concentric circles. And a lot of classes I talk about Start With Why, Simon Sinek's book, because I think it's just a great manifestation of this concept. I don't want to be known as their real estate agent. I want to be known as their community guide or their buying and selling guide when they get to that point, or just a resource for them. Because when we start with those circles that we're looking at in the Start With Why, a lot of people start with who they are. I'm a real estate agent. Okay, there's 1.5 million of us out there. Why should I read your email? Why should I listen to your content as opposed to the other 1.5 million realtors who are trying to get and steal my attention? It's because you're a guide. You're a guide to their community. You're a guide to life hacks. You're a guide to help them with things that they didn't know were problems that you can solve for them. And those things do not have to be real estate all the time. However, part of the email needs to be a call to action that if it is time for them to buy or sell, they need to hook up with you. So we have our subject line to get their attention. We have the introduction, reminding them that we are a guide or that we are their support in an area for all things about our community, even when they're not thinking about buying and selling. If they want to know the best restaurants to go to, the best trails for the kids to go hiking in the middle of a weekend, you're going to have that information for them. The body is the actual content that we're trying to convey to them, that the information in there. Now, in the newsletter, you may have 3 or 4 different ideas or articles or concepts you want to get ahead. But most of us are not reading newsletters that way anymore. Most of us want to get one thought, one idea, one concept, one resource, and a one and done and be done with it. And so we'll talk about the difference between newsletters and drip campaigns as far as formation of the content. Next is your call to action. Please click here for more information is a example of a call to action. Sign up. A consultation meeting, if you're thinking about buying and selling, is another call to action, and one is a what we call first tier. It's kind of a light and fluffy, just click here if you want to know more. The deeper, the second tier is that click here, that call to action that says, set up an appointment with me if you are thinking about buying or selling, or know somebody who is, please refer me. Those are more direct, specific type of tasks that need to be done. And lastly is your signature. And I would suggest in your signature line, you have another, that's your first tier, kind of your global call to action that says, if you're thinking about buying or selling, set up a consultation with me now. And that's reoccurring at the bottom. So having your branding there is to remind them what you do for a living. The content rather in the body is to remind them why you're valuable in this process. And so again, subject line and then a quick introduction to remind them you're the tour guide or you're the resource for them rather. The body of the context is the new meaningful thing they haven't seen elsewhere. The call to action at the end, it may or not be related to that. So again, in a newsletter, we're trying to give them consumer information and great content that makes them want to keep reading and remembering who you are. in the call to action, I mean, in a drip campaign, rather, is we have a very specific targeted message about the value of you as a buying, helping with buying, or helping with selling, or helping with investment, or converting a FISBO, whatever. And the signature line is your branding, your reoccurring branding, where you should have the same headshot for a while, your contact information, your company brand, and that kind of stuff. So those are elements that we need to talk about. Now, all of this should be part of a story. And as I just alluded to in the last slide, the story is about you as a resource for them, as a help, as a guide, as trusted, as a professional that's going to help them through the process. And we've got to have a consistent story across all of our marketing assets. So again, if you are sending email campaigns about the nature of the marketplace and things are great, and then on social media you're being negative and contrary and all that, you've caused breakage in your storytelling, what your consistent message is. So this brand persona, this online persona that you should be adopting, will be manifest in your emails. So for example, and I've used this in other classes to reflect back on those recordings if you haven't taken them. When we talk about farming, for example, I share the story that at the beginning of COVID, I wrote a blog post about what the Rappahannock Regional Library was offering for kids, and free tutors, and free resources for learning online, and Linda, and a whole bunch of other stuff, right? And audiobooks and all things that they needed during COVID. That had nothing to do with real estate, although it did give me some clients that I referred out to other people because I was just too busy in other things. But it did get some inquiries. It did help build people signing up for more content, and even the subscribing to email campaigns. Now, the value of that was that it was talking about their lifestyle. Now, several years ago, to this day, it's probably one of the most popular posts that I did, was I wrote a blog post about how to keep your home safe in a digital way. Like, I have a contract that I had my daughter sign before they got their first devices. We talked about the free tools you could have in the house to get rid of adult websites and things from filtering in, or you can program other websites you didn't want the kids on. And we talked about how Disney has something called Disney Circle. I don't know if it's still out there or not. Disney Circle allowed you to shut down one kid at a time instead of the whole house from the internet. So if there's just that one kid who ticked you off today, you can go, no more for you, and that person's done without changing router passwords and have to figure out what devices they have and how they got around it. They have data on their phone. It just shut them all down at the same time. And for $99, that was a gift to us as parents back then. These type of things were very popular. What was not popular was, here's my 3 new listings. Here's the 6 ways to get your house ready to go on the market, because they're getting that data from everywhere, and that doesn't differentiate you from anyone else. Sending in the local high school highlights or football information for their high school by that region. Again, their segment would need to be in that territory. And then the myriad of other things you could do. That's got to be a consistent story. Your website, when they click from the email to the website, it needs to have the same professional branding and good content, and that's where you start getting them into your capture system. Because everybody who's getting the email at the beginning, again, think about the funnel marketing system. Everybody's rolling around the top of the funnel, and these email campaigns are just kind of helping bring them a little bit down, so that if they're reading my newsletter, which is about my market, my community, lifestyle stuff, clearly at the bottom, I'm going to say, if you're thinking about buying or selling, give me a call, set up a consultation. And the second that they email me and go, we are thinking about buying, I now add them, their email, to my segmented buying campaign. Does that make sense to everybody? Like, they don't come, like, the first time I get a name, and this person's just like, I just happen to get your name because we're volunteering together. And I go, we're going to put them in a buyer campaign. They will surely buy one day. Obviously, they're going to unsubscribe if they aren't thinking about buying, because it's just junk mail, stuff they don't need or want. But if I have area information, and it could be cutesy stuff, we'll talk about some creative ways in a minute, they're far more likely to stay engaged and subscribed. Now, as I said earlier, the consumers spend 18 to 24 months online before buying and selling. And so if you're giving them enough information to follow you, and then the invitation to join other segments of your email marketing campaign, they are obviously going to be taking where they live, which is the internet, and embracing that that's where data is coming from. You know, I was yesterday I was talking to someone, a friend of mine who's from out of the area, and her spouse is running for office. And she says, "Yeah, I got to go out this weekend. We're going to go knock on doors and let people know we're campaigning and we're running for office and all that stuff." I was like, okay, cool, cool, cool. And I didn't think twice about it. And then about 10 minutes later, I'm deep in a project, like I'm super hyper focused, and my doorbell rings, which is an immediate way to irritate the crap out of me, to come unannounced to the house. But I get upstairs, I run up the stairs, you know, dog is yapping, and I'm now broken my focus. And there's this guy standing outside the door, and he goes, "I need you to sign a petition." He put it in front of me. And I was like, okay, what's the petition for? And we are likely going to get a sheets right at the outside of my subdivision. And he's super upset because everyone's always super upset about every change in the world that happens. No matter what the change is, there's always a group of people who are going to be mad about it. And he's just very angrily telling me about this gas station going in, and it's going to be more traffic. And I'm like, there's already a commercial building there. There's already a lot of traffic. And plus, I really, you know, I don't mind the fact that I'll now be able to ride my bike and go get ice cream and a sandwich and some fried food and some junk food, and gas outside of my home is good, as opposed to stopping at the crappy gas station that's the only one on the right going out of town. Um, but really what I found out was, yes, I was irritated at being asked to sign a petition because it's 2024, but also there was an interruption there that I hadn't expected, that wasn't invited. And I find that we do that a lot in our marketing, that we interrupt things with things that aren't important. And I was thinking back to my friend who said they were going to go door knocking. And I'm like, I don't know what the efficacy of that is, because, like, for me, I just don't like the interruption. I thank you, campaign people, for going door to door and spending the time and the effort. But generally speaking, I've already decided who I was going to vote for well before anybody knocks on my door. And it's just another interruption. And I feel like a lot of us are paying for not having interruption. We pay for a Spotify so that we don't have ads on our music. We pay to have ads taken off of, you know, I pay, what is it, $7 a month, so Google doesn't have ads on my YouTube channel. Like, we are paying a premium to not be interrupted, so that we only get the content that we find useful and valuable to us, because the world is full of interruptions. 3,104 advertisements a day for the average adult consumer. 3,100 ads seen a day, interruptions to what we really went working for. I want my emails and my brand to be something that is a welcome value that they can digest when it's time for them to do that, not to go stop and interrupt them from what they're doing. Plus, spending, you know, 35 minutes to an hour a month nurturing relationships through meaningful content is where they already are. They're already online consumers, and that's a much better hour invested than knocking on doors, or, and it may not be a replacement, maybe it's an addition to, but knocking on doors or cold calling. Then I'm still hearing people doing that, even though, I mean, obviously we have a long list of people being fined for it. This hour or so a month invested in just putting together good content that you would care about as a consumer is already where they're at, without interrupting where they don't want interruptions. Now, that does mean that we have to have a plan, and what we call this as a storyboard. Now, the storyboard concept says I got to think about what my segmentation here is. Is it a buyer? Is it a seller? Is it just general public? Is it a FSBO? Is it an investor? Is it a new first-time home buyer? Is it 55 and older? And I have to go, what is the plan for them? So we're going to go back to our 18 to 24 months. I need to have at least a 2-year plan for buyers and sellers. Now, again, we're going and separating email campaigns from newsletters. Newsletters could be just stuff going on in your life. And if you do subscribe to my instructor newsletter, you see I'm hit or miss on whether it's monthly or not. So that's definitely not a plan to follow, because my newsletters are when I have something to say, I share it. I don't do it every month where it may be bombarding them. But my issue is not the same frequency that's necessary if you are trying to invest in buyers and sellers in the community. And about once a month is generally often enough. I think any shorter time period in that is exhausting for them unless it is a drip campaign for specific segmentation of action, whether it be buyer or seller, investors or such. So I want to storyboard an 18 and 24 month buyer and seller plan, and that is different than my monthly email for my newsletter. And so storyboarding here would be to sit down with a piece of paper and pencil and go, okay, I'm going to start off with the introduction. And this is my drip campaign. This is for buyers or sellers who are in specific segmented groups. So my intro could be, hi, I'm an agent. Here's a little bit about me. Here's a little video I'm going to embed in my email. Again, video has the highest conversion, retention, and action rate of any content out there. But the storyboard, a segmented group. The storyboard segmented group needs to be at least 24 months of content on a aggressive but not overwhelming platform. So depending on that group, it may be an introduction to me as an agent. Hi, I'm your agent. Here's a video in the email introducing my services. It could be a resources. So day 3, it could be, by the way, here's some things to help you on your journey in buying a home. Day 7, it could be just about the community, just what we love here and my favorite list of restaurants. Click here if you want to go see them, and click here if you want to go find out more about some of the cool things that can be done with a family or for young couples who are dating or whatever you're listed. My wife years ago put together 100 ideas for cheap or free dates. She was working with a small group of young people at the church at the time, or at least creating it for them. And it became very popular. Like they're still using that later on. Somebody mentioned that. We bumped into somebody who is now married, and they were talking about that list of 100 cheap date ideas that she had presented. That kind of community information is, yes, very targeted about buying in the area, but it's about the lifestyle of the area. And then we get to the tools. So what are some things that I think a buyer should have? Or what are some apps a buyer should have? What does my website do for you? How do you actually search for homes that may not be on Zillow or homes.com or whatever? And then day 25 is a check-in where you're just sending an email going, hey, what am I not giving you? What resources, tools, or market information would you find valuable that you'd like to get from me? It's a request for them to engage or respond. And it could be a survey. It could just reply to this email. And these are all examples, by the way. This is not the end all be all. This is just an example of storyboarding. And then day 35 could just be about pets. What's it like to move when you got pets? What can I do to help you make that system easier? The market, day 50 is when we start talking again about market statistics. This is probably under resources. I would have also shared what a buyer needs to know about buying in today's market. And then we revisit whether it's good or bad for buyer or seller, depending on your segmented group. And then maybe day 65 is like, oh, by the way, don't forget to download my buyer guide. And all of these things are 1 or 2 paragraphs with clickable resources and assets. This is the drip campaign that we're creating. It's just an example of storyboarding. Now, how do we get emails? There's a lot of ways. One of the easiest ways, if you do have active listings, go to HomeSpotter. Everybody at CBE has a HomeSpotter account. And if you go to HomeSpotter, and we do this on other trainings, so I'm not going to break from here to go do it, just to say, as a reminder, if you have a listing, there are people taking and making inquiries on your listing through Instagram or Facebook or wherever. Before that campaign ends, if you log into HomeSpotter and go into the listing account, you can go download all the names and email addresses that campaign has caught through the social media and online marketing for your listing over that first week period. A couple years ago, I had a listing that was in the market for less than 2 weeks, and I ran the campaign an extra week. So we at CBE pay for your first week's campaign, and the second week you choose if you want to run it again. So I ran it again, and in 2 weeks, I wound up with somewhere around 700 emails. So I exported them out of HomeSpotter, and I imported them into Moxie Engage, and then added them to buyer segments, because the thought was if they are clicking ads on homes, they are likely to be home buyers. Some of them may be sellers looking at competition, but in generally, I'm going to do my best guess here, and I can put them in the campaign. If they unsubscribe, they unsubscribe. If they don't, then they're going to keep getting emails about the area. If I'm doing my job well and I'm creating good content marketing, then putting them in that drip campaign is going to be valuable to me. So that's one example is HomeSpotter. Other ways are simply having sites on your Moxie website to say, sign up for my newsletter, or reach out to me. And everybody who comes in your email, you can, if you're using Moxie Engage, you can connect it to your contacts through your CBE email, and it'll sync up. So every email you get should be added to your contents if it's a consumer touch. Now, I'm not going to add other agents in here as an agent myself, but as an agent, I'm going to add every buyer, seller, every person that gets in my orbit if I get their email addresses. It could be from other places too. Your past clients should all be in these campaigns. And if you haven't talked to them in years, it's a good chance to start that engine again, set them up for the newsletter. Again, if you don't know if they're buying and selling, put them in the newsletter and let them self-select to send it out. Having that call to action on your website. So if you are on Facebook and you're sharing information, and again, in the farming class, I talk about creating assets on your website that you can share online when people ask for inquiries to get them to go back to your website. There should be a place that's very notable and obvious on your website to sign up for your newsletter about the area or the community, buying helps, selling helps, whatever. It should be in your signature line and your own email address. Here, please sign up if you're looking for information about Fredericksburg and activities going on and stuff. Again, don't focus on that segment of only sign up if you're a buyer or seller. You're alienating so many other people that you engage on a daily basis. And every once in a while, just go to social and go, guys, you may not know this, but I do a newsletter every month about X, Y, and Z, whatever you're doing it on. And it could be your thing. It could be nonprofit that you're involved in. It could be the SPCA and helping get dogs and kittens new homes. It could be whatever you're involved in that you go out to that group and go, hey, here's my newsletter sign up form for this. So it's a matter of being diligent and having a system. Again, we talk about this in systems. And if you're new to us and you haven't taken classes with me, obviously I have a video recording for productivity. It's about a 2-hour webinar where we talk about setting up systems. And so if I get an onboarded buyer, so it's my first time, and a buyer emails and goes, hey, can you give me more information about this home? I'm going to have a templated email that I can send to them that has meaningful content, and obviously a invitation to sign up for my newsletter and or information for buyers, right? We're going to have the two options there in that responded email, but I've got their email address and they've asked for more information about specific property. Part of the checklist, the processing of that should be go to immediately to my CRM, add them in there, and then assign them the appropriate segmented email content. So it's a matter of being diligent. And a couple tips. Brief is better. And I'm well known for being someone of few words and being very brief. I'm not. This was the hardest thing for me. I just have so much stuff that I want to tell folks, but I've got to pace myself as an agent. I may have 6 things, and again, going back to our other training and other classes we've done, you need to have an ongoing list. If somebody is asking you a question and you go, man, I think more people need to know about this, that should go on your second brain system, whether it is Apple Notes, whether it is a shared Google Doc or a cloud Google Doc you have, or Evernote or something. So that when I sit down on a Saturday, and for me, the first of every month is when I send out my newsletter as an instructor. And so I have a to-do that pops up on the Saturday before the first day of every month, right? And so I use Todoist so I can program in that, and it happens. And it reminds me to spend an hour or so that Saturday writing some things down. So what I do is I go back to that list I've been keeping all month, and I go, man, I got 7 things this month that I think agents want to know and understand better. I'm not going to push out all 7 in that newsletter because 7 is too many. There may be 1, 2, or 3, and if they're timely, that's how it gets to the top. But maybe no more than 3 things are going on that in an email. So if I'm an agent again, and I'm looking at connecting with a consumer, that week I may have heard about a cool way to clean the smell out of your dishwasher. I don't know how to keep skunks away. It may be that the Shakespeare in the Park troupe is starting back up in September. I'm going to keep a list of that stuff. And clearly, the Shakespeare in the Park troupe starting back up their stuff in downtown. I don't know if they are. I'm just using an example. That is not something I need to send out on the beginning of August because they're not starting until September 20th. If I start at the beginning of August and tell my followers this in my newsletter, they're going to forget. If I go to the beginning, the first day of September, and go, hey, in 3 weeks it starts up, they're more likely to remember. And so the Shakespeare in the Park troupe getting back started up in the fall goes not on this email. It stays on that list of things I want to talk about. So I give them just a little bit of stuff, and I keep a lot of content I can share later, and I have spread it out throughout the year. It may be like Agatha Christie's Murder on the Orient Express is playing at the Riverside Theater starting this month. I think it starts in 2 weeks. And I may be excited about that. So I put that in my newsletter. Hey, did you know the theater has got Agatha Christie's Murder? I remember the first time I saw this. It's great. Da, da, da. By the way, did you see the movie? Here's a link to the movie on Netflix. And now I'm giving them area content and also a little bit of me. And I forgot to mention this earlier. Actually, I didn't forget to mention earlier. It's on the next slide. But got to be first person and in your voice. So brief is better, quirky fun is cool. When you can, send them back to your website, right? And so have a, hey, if you're thinking about buying a home, click here, go to my website to see the information for buyers. My buyer consultation guide is there. Also some emails and videos about things you may not have heard of. That goes kind of at the bottom of that newsletter. That's the invitation to go back to your website to get more information that you've already created there. And then they can sign up for the segmentation of buyer by emailing you and asking to be. Pictures and videos help tell the story. Right now, I mean, with Canva and AI, and it takes 2 seconds to create a graphic. You don't have to go hunting like we had to for so many years. Like I feel like when I say that, like when we had to go hunting and gathering and like get all our gear to go find the right photo, and now you can just go to AI or Canva and type in the word or something good for you to use there. So pictures are good. Video is the best. So if you've recorded a video, again, we're bringing the hubs and spokes, put the video on your website, put a call to action on your email to say, I created a video recently helping sellers understand new commission rules. So if you're interested in selling your home, go to this link and go get that. And that goes kind of the bottom of that newsletter. Now, if they are a seller in the drip campaign, that is the email. Dear seller, I have created this video for you, and I may embed the video on the drip campaign. So again, newsletters and drip campaigns are different. And then actionable content. You have to give them something to do, not just read. Click here for more information. Click here to let your opinion be known. Click here for whatever it is, get them to take action. Lifestyle marketing we've talked about, and then getting back to your website is an important thing. And so you'll notice a lot of your newsletters now, you get like the first paragraph of the blog post or the information, and there's a link that says to read more, click here. That's to see if they're truly interested. We get to kind of give them a taste in that first paragraph, and then link to click back to our website, which is how we build traffic on the website, and we introduce them to all the other things we do. All right, and the power of first person and brand voice. This is going to go back to what I was talking about earlier. Speak to them one-on-one. This has got to be a conversation and dialogue. We know when it's just scripted, generic content. And so Liv has created a seller campaign of 2 years. I've created a bunch of one-offs and some drip campaigns. Coldwell Banker has given you a bunch of drip campaigns. In a few minutes, I'm going to show you how to go in and edit those to make them come from you in the first person. Tweak them so it sounds like you're dropping a note to a friend. Everything you do needs to be about the first person conversation, not generic information, not just, I mean, even if it is generic information, go edit it to make it sound like it's not in your campaigns, which we'll demonstrate in a minute. Now let's talk about a couple ideas. So some of these I have stolen from other people who are masters at these email campaigns. Some of the stuff is stuff that I have done over the years that worked well. So it's a little bit of a mixed match there. And hopefully you're already thinking about some ideas that are going to help engage. What would you read? Why would you stay subscribed and engaged for a newsletter that was coming out? So first one is we're going to start with your on-call realtor. Dear buyers or seller, thank you for reading my newsletter, or just, again, that one-off if it's your buyer or seller drip campaign, but your newsletter especially. I'm your on-call realtor. You don't have to wait for an answer from me. You can reach out to me. I've got the answers for you. I got your coaching, I got your mentoring. And the on-call realtor concept is a campaign that, let's say again, maybe a seller or a buyer you put them in the buyer seller segment. The on-call realtor is, I'm free to answer your questions. There's no pressure. I'm not gonna make you sign anything today unless you want to go see property or you want to list your property. But I'm your on-call. I'm your first call. If your friend needs help, I'm your first call. If you're drowning, I'm your first call. And if you need a list of restaurants in the area, I'm your first call. If you need to know what the secret number to the water and septic system in the county is, I'm your first call. If you want to know what the county ordinances are, I'm your first call. And so I'm your first call, the on-call realtor. I saw an agent here recently instead of Better Call Saul, he used the font. It's Better Call and his name. And then he had at the bottom, for any real estate or community questions you have, let me know. If I don't know, I'll find the answer for you. And the whole vibe of the email campaign looked like Better Call Saul. Now, if you've never watched Better Call Saul, you have no idea how funny that is. If you have watched it, then it probably resonates with you because we're building off of a brand that's recognized. The problem is trademark issues and some other things you got to be careful about. But I thought it was kind of a cute campaign. The next one is what's being built there. Now, this one I did when I was an agent years ago. Anytime you saw, because I'm also just nosy, anytime I saw anything that was being constructed, any type of groundbreaking, anything, obviously not houses, but any type of commercial building, I would make the phone calls I needed to whoever the commercial agent was or whatever to find out what's being built there. And my monthly newsletter had the 2 or 3 notable places of saying, you may have noticed work was being done at the corner of Gordon Road and Plank Road. That's going to be a 7-Eleven. And I would just have a list of whatever nosy thing I came up with about what's going on in the county or community that they'd be interested in. And that actually was I hate to say it, probably one of the most popular emails, parts of the newsletter I sent out was what's being built there. Home Hunters Toolkit. Now, we have talked in, again, our farming classes and our buyer consultation classes, how important it is to consumers who are digital first. So we know 76% of consumers use their phone when they're doing their real estate search, and that they're searching for 18 to 24 months. And so what apps can I give them? And I wouldn't here's the 20 apps every home buyer should know. I've done that, and it's too much, but it also robs me of the ability to give them one app at a time, which gives me a lot of content. And so the Home Hunters Toolkit was actually a self-select option. So in other words, I would say in my email, in my newsletter, there was a link at the bottom that says, if you're thinking about buying and you're looking for the best tools to do so, best apps to do so, click here. And then it would lead them to go to subscribe to the newsletter. And I would say, when you subscribe, leave a note for me that you're looking for the Home Hunters Toolkit. Or you could have created this, and now that was, again, when email campaigns and blogging was really all we had. Now that you have a website that's more robust, you could have a website with all the apps on it, and then just showcase one app per email in your drip campaign for buyers and say, click here to get all the apps, and then they can go and get all of them there if you wanted to do both. Library favorites. I know, again, this goes back to our newsletter stuff. This is not necessarily our now the time to buy, and here's the 6 things you need to buy. Library favorites is quite literally a book that you're reading or that somebody else has recommended that you just started. This is, and I'm going to go back to this, people will resonate and connect with you better when you're giving them something personal. So if you talk about a book you just read, you get one little paragraph. If you're thinking about reading a book, here's a good one. And it can be about marketing. It could be just a nice, warm story. Stay away from political things. Stay away from trashy novels. You know who you are. Give them something that's family friendly to read. It's dangerous to go alone. Obviously, I have an affinity for the 80s. I love 8-bit fonts and graphics, and that's not only because in this email campaign, but wherever I can, I tend to add it. And one series I did that lasted 18 months was all built off my favorite game ever, Zelda, especially the original one. But even now, the Nintendo Switch one, I may have spent 182 hours because it tells you how sick and deprived you are. During the last holiday season, I tend to, during the holidays when I'm not traveling as much and the company seems to be settled usually between November and January, I always pick up a game to try to start and finish throughout that time period. And so Zelda was kind of my theme here. And so in Zelda, There's this one opening spot where he comes and meets the old man and says, "It's dangerous to go alone. Take this." My entire campaign, my email campaign for 18 months with buyers was, "It's dangerous to go without my guidance or without my consultation or whatever." And every email, which came out about every 2 weeks, I think, was another way that they hadn't thought of needing protection. I could protect them. And right now we have even more ways now than we did 10 years ago when I did that campaign. Maybe it was longer than that, but it was all built off of this one graphic. And I would have some little, 80s graphic in there, some 8-bit graphic in there. And by the way, if you're using Canva, there's a treasure trove, as you can see in this session, of 8-bit gaming graphics to make it look like these old games. But "It's dangerous to go alone" was kind of the theme of that. And that was the subject line. And so the subject line would say, "It's dangerous to go alone." Um, um, and it would have a colon, it would have wire fraud, and it would have security or surveillance equipment, or it would have title insurance. And it would just be a quick 1 or 2 paragraphs, what a buyer needed to know, but it had a theme which made them more likely to answer it. Meet the owner. We talk a lot about this. I see very few people doing this, but it's a highly effective. Matter of fact, it's one of the most highly rated engagement and communication marketing pieces for most. And that is to go interview a business owner. Especially the more small the business, the more appreciative they are, the more they'll share with their tribe and theirs. But it's just an email campaign, that maybe a video you did, standing side by side with the owner, talking about their restaurant or their lawn care business. And we stick with restaurants because it's kind of easy and everybody kind of, has to eat. But not everybody wants restaurant reviews all the time. There's so many other small businesses that you and I know out there all the time. They could just be a quick blurb about it. Maybe the video gets embedded in there, but meet the owner is another very popular marketing content. How things work. This is the inside view of real estate. And I have mixed feelings about this marketing, but I have no evidence for or against it other than that's a great lead in as to what the concept is. I don't know if it works, but I'll try it. Now, it does work. It gets a lot of traction. And if you don't believe me, go look at TikTok right now. And I have finally put the app back on my phone. I had it on website only because of security issues. And now I'm just like, it's growing. The age demographic and target audience is getting much older. There's better content on there. So I'm not as antagonistic as I was before, but it's still a huge risk and still got a lot of safety concerns. I've just given up. I just given up. But no, if you go watch, there's a bunch of agents out there talking about a day in the life of a real estate agent. Like, I'm at a title. Let's talk about what title insurance is. I'm at closing. Let's talk about the settlement agent does. I'm at an open house. Here's how an open house really works. Here's what nobody else has told you. And it's like these snippets of the little inside of what we do. Instead of just giving them market statistics and why they should hire you, you actually exemplify why they should hire you by talking about what you do every day. Obviously, these are some starter ones. And obviously, again, I think AI is a great way to overcome either your lack of time or overcome writer's block or creativity. So if you've taken, and I know that every time I get done with these classes, somebody emails me and says, "Now I feel like I have to go watch the other 3 webinars." Look, I didn't put time into those webinars and training if I didn't think you should watch them anyways. All of this stuff works together. Like, you're not going to build masterful email campaigns off of an hour and a half session. But AI to the rescue. If you go and have an idea, go to AI, go to ChatGPT and go, "I'm a real estate agent, you're a marketing firm, a marketing expert. I want you to take this idea and help me build a 18-month email campaign out of this." And ChatGPT will write you 24 emails, 1 a week, or it'll tell you how frequently you should send them. It'll suggest what time you should send that kind of content, what days you should send that content. It'll suggest what subject lines you should have for those kind of content, that kind of content. And you can start just copy and pasting. You're going to tweak it, right? You're going to make it first person. You're going to tell it this is, you're going to edit it to go into your campaigns. But it can definitely help you overcome some of these things and or create new ideas or flesh out new ideas. The other website I want to talk about for just a second is more, and I've shared this in a lot of other classes. It's a tool to help you with co-branding. That's not co-branding, and measuring the efficacy of a subject line. And for some reason, the website's down. Okay, cool. We'll talk about coming back to that later. Um, hold, please. Do, 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 do. All right, the website's down. That's fine. I will send out a link when we post this video to a website where you can go and ask it to look at your email subject line and tell you if it's a good one or not, what the score is, and what the likelihood of people opening it is. It does things like tell you you need at least one emoji in there. Yes, we have to have emojis and subject lines to get them to open, but AI will do some of that stuff for you too. All right. So with that groundwork laid as to good email content and practices and segmentation, let's go to Moxie Engage and talk a little bit about what that looks like and how some of this stuff is already created for you and what you need to do to make it your own. So I'm going to go to all right, here to Moxie. So I'm logged into Moxie Engage, and I'm going to start with the People tab here. So I'm going to go look at my people, like I'm Moses. So first of all, just under people, just click on Add People to add someone. I've added myself. I've added A. Matthew Rathbun. That's my training person for our class here. You can see that everybody. I just sync my contacts with Moxie Engage. As a reminder, there is a never-ending supply of training. If you go to my CB desk and go to Coldwell Banker University, search for Moxie, and there is a whole bunch of webinars. There's some stuff where trainers will take you through it. There's some self-paced stuff. There's some frequently asked questions. There's some videos. Everything you need is right there. All right. So once I have added that person, again, here and add, or you can go over to the settings and you can import the Excel spreadsheet. So remember, I told you earlier, you can go to HomeSpotter and export leads from all your past listings to create a spreadsheet, and then you can import them here, or you can import contacts from your contact list. And here we're just going to go to, I added a person. When I go to that person and I click on their name, up comes a couple options for me. So this one is a client. And again, if it's a non-client, that is just your general consumer base. That is your, the profile we talked about, the segmentation of consumer base. Over here, I can add subscriptions. So subscription is neighborhood news. Now, this is just marketing and statistics, or I can add a subscriber for listing accounts or listing announcements where you're going to go in and announce your new listings. And so these are the pre-done. You just click the button and add them as a subscription. And just going to ask you to choose the zip code they're in, or you can create a more niche thing. Like you could go just down to the community, a neighborhood, so to speak. And then they will now get monthly the neighborhood news email newsletter, and that's under add subscriptions. And then listing announcements are just what you think they are. You're going to get to set them up in here and go, every time you get a just listed or just sold opportunity, you're going to be able to email them. I do find that 2 is too many. I think for a lot of consumers, we actually see an increase in unsubscribes. If you're sending just sold, they really only want to know about just listed. So that is how you get those subscriptions. So you're already checking the boxes for that monthly thing for buyers or sellers. Sellers, they want to know what's going on in their neighborhood too. So that may be the automated content. Down here, I'm going to go click on edit where it says groups. And this is where I'm going to select which group they're in. Now you can add additional groups or you can remove some of the templated ones that are already there. So I may go and say, okay, this is a buyer. And also, this is a friend who's in Richmond. And so if I write content for the Richmond market, they're getting that, whereas the rest of my group won't. This is the segments we're going to have. Now, yours are going to obviously look different, and you can add them very easily to segment your clients out into different groups. Just remember at the end of a transaction, for example, go remove them from the buyer campaigns. That's part of your checkoff list at the end of the transaction, to go remove them from those campaigns so that they're not getting email that doesn't apply anymore now that they've closed. They're just getting your newsletter. All right, so that's going to be the segmentation. Faves and saves, this is going to be for home buyers who are searching. If they're using your website or if they're using the emails you're sending out with listings that you're sending them every month, it'll all be listed here in their contacts. So this is another practice in onboarding. So if Chris called and said, "Hey, Matthew, I'm looking for a new home," I'm going to take and put Chris's contact information in Engage. I'm going to go sign him up for the neighborhood news. I'm going to also make sure he's marked as a buyer here. And then I'm going to set him up so that he is getting emails for that community. And when he takes action on them, they'll be listed here. So I can create the search for him. Now you can do it in MLS, but MLS is not giving you a lead generation tool. You can't go back and look and see what they're looking at and doing. This tool that is going to be sent to them is a mobile-friendly website, so they can look at it on their phone, and I can send it on a routine basis when new things come up, and it'll show a history here of their activity on them, and then I can look and see what activity we've had, whether we're emailing one another, especially if you have tied this to your Coldwell Banker email system. I can see the emails I've sent to them. I can add emails. I can get custom activities, so I know what my traction is with them, and it notes them profiles. So all this stuff then helps with campaigns. So the campaigns up here, the top here, is where we're going to set up our personalized or your personalized campaigns. By default, there are no campaigns set up for you. You have to go choose them. We don't want to send email on your behalf. So to read across the top of the campaigns are the drip campaigns, the things we talked about earlier that are going to people by segment of buyer or seller or investor if you've set up that content. E-blasts are one-off emails where you just send an email and it goes out to everybody in your contacts or everybody in the generic list. This is going to be your newsletter, the newsletter version, and Moxie is called eBlast. Neighborhood news is what we talked about. This is where I can go set up people to get statistics about what's going on in their community, which may or may not be valuable unless we know they're truly in the buying and selling mindset. Listing announcements will be just that. The new listings I get, I can go here and make sure they're added. And then you can have your email templates that you've created in here, right? Now, there's only so much work we can do for you, but we've done as much as we can for the moment. I'm working on the new buyer campaigns that kind of does all the buyer drip stuff that we talked about already. That is not done, but the seller ones are. Now, when I go over here, back to my campaigns, over here where it says add to library is where you're going to start. And this is where you're going to find stuff that has been created on your behalf. So if I go over to campaigns and sources, you can see that there are email campaigns that are created by Coldwell Banker, the national franchise. These are your kind of super generic long-term campaigns. And then there's by the brokerage. That's what we at Coldwell Banker Elite have set up. So go click on the brokerage one, and you're going to see that we have set up a seller campaign, a buyer campaign that is still being worked on, and then a 19-month buyer campaign that is getting some updates. So you go see the lister there, and you're going to want to add to campaigns. So let's say we want to add our 24-month seller campaign. We're going to click add. We go to eBlasts. And nothing, we don't do newsletters for you. So we don't have a template there. You can go to the generic template and then emails. And you are going to want to go to the emails and add the monthly newsletter and the blank template to your system, because those are the ones I've created that are your template. Those are your starting points for framework there. All right. So once you've added what you want from the library, and guys, this library is super extensive. So if I go back to campaigns and click on Coldwell Banker or just all sources, actually, there are a lot of campaigns here that you can choose from, and they are done by sub-segments. And so you may have the revitalized services. If you're dealing with sellers, you may want to add the content there, but be clear here that if I add the campaigns from the library, I am not adding the client to those campaigns. What I'm doing is adding the templated emails to my campaign that I can edit. So now that I've added all the templates here, I can go back to my campaigns, and I'm going to go here and go, I want a seller campaign. And actually, I've already started one here. When I click on the seller campaign that I just added from the generic library, that was content we created for you. You need to go make it your own now. So when I go here, I can click on this campaign before I get to recipients, and I can see that it's got all this stuff here. And I'm going to edit the schedule. I can decide when it goes out. I can change the order in which you're coming in. I can add other emails from other campaigns. Maybe you want to add Revitalize as a campaign here. I can go look at the other campaigns that I have added, go to Revitalize and add that template and go, I want this one to go out actually on day 15 for my sellers. And now you can see that it changed it up here to day 15 to insert it between the welcome one and your home value one. I can go look at the email and I click on view, and I can see what email is going out. Now, when you look at our email campaign, you can see that it's got the contact's first name. So it's going to automatically import from your contacts that client's first name. It gives them a bunch of stuff here that was created for you. And then it's going to end with a call to action to schedule an appointment, because this is a seller campaign, and your contact information. Notice here it says the Coldwell Banker Elite Team. You're going to go, it's going to have your stuff embedded in there, and you can edit those later on. So I can edit the name here of the campaign. I can add and remove things that I don't like that were here. It's not going to hurt our feelings if you don't like a certain campaign, you don't want to use it. And then I can go and hit setup, and I can add either an individual recipient, or I can add the group. So I can add all buyers here, and everybody who is marked as a buyer gets this campaign. Now they start on day one of the campaign when they're added. So you could have 150 people in that buyer campaign, and we're going to go back here to that schedule we saw. And when you add someone on day one, they start from day one of the campaign to day 690, right? They don't start midway through where it makes sense. They're going to start there. Now, when you do e-blasts, this is whatever you send in your e-blast, which is your newsletter, everybody gets it the same. It's not done in the staggered amounts. I don't get like the historical ones. Now, if I want to go edit those emails that I added to my campaign, I'm going to go over here to my emails, and you can see all the emails you've added. So if I go back and I notice that the seller campaign and that was added to the content is here, I can go edit the email and I can start changing things. And I highly recommend you do this to every email you're going to send. Square off a couple hours on a Saturday, go back, and we're thrilled to welcome you to the Coldwell Banker Elite Journey. Go, instead of saying Coldwell Banker Elite Journey, go say to my seller journey, and at Coldwell Banker Elite, say, we created this so if you don't want to do all that work, it still works for you. We had to put something in there, but you're going to go back and say, you know what, I have stuff on my website, and instead of using the CV estimator, which goes back to the franchise's website, because this is a franchise template, you could go put a link to your estimator or your Make Me Move, or whatever, not Make Me Move, what the tools on your Moxie website or your personal website here. So this is where you're going to edit those, and then you can add those to your templates in the future. All right. So again, once you add them from library, they go under my emails. Then you go through my emails and you start tweaking and editing the emails to be a reflection of you in the first person with your brand voice and your resources, so that once you change them here in emails, then once you go add that email to the campaign, it'll look like whatever you changed and added to emails. And now you can mix and match various campaigns based on the different emails that are out there. So this is where your emails are housed and managed here for Moxie. And again, your e-blasts, just start a new e-blast here, go change the e-blast, select whatever template you want. And maybe this is a generic one where you're doing monthly newsletter. Hit save, and now you can go through and edit all this stuff to be yours, right? And add a couple of key things there, and you already have some graphics and stuff that again, if you need help with graphics, Canva's probably the place I would go create them, and then you can just upload them through the edit feature here. So, and I know that's real quick. I do. My job here is to give you an orientation to this so that you'll go play with it and use it. I don't believe there's any system anywhere online that you're going to understand through just watching somebody do it without going and doing the work yourself, without going in there and playing with it. Until you hit send, nobody's getting it. So go spend your time exercising those muscles in your brain of creativity and being able to edit those things. And as you saw for me, I set myself up. I've got a Gmail account that is really just for testing. And I set myself up as a client, and then I add myself to the campaign to see what the end result would look like before I hit and go live on it. This is part of the marketing brain you have to use, so to speak. I don't know. I don't know where you are in your marketing process, but I can tell you that email campaigns are one of the most effective. And if you embed a video in an email campaign, the conversion rate just goes through the roof. And so I was talking to someone last week who called me and was asking about this class. They were basically, should I take this? I don't really have time to do emails and whatever. And I said, where are you going right now? And the person told me they were going to do a photo shoot for the house, to get the house on the market, to go do an open house. Open houses have a 3% conversion rate as buyer clients for you in the future, 1.6% conversion rate for buyers of the actual home they're doing an open house, and you're going to spend 6 to 7 hours on average doing an open house. Imagine if you just skipped one open house for the year and spent those 7 hours building your campaign that you can just put people in and start having meaningful engagement with them for 2 years. Better use of your time. So also get together with your brokers or even ASCs if you need some help with the technicality of it. But again, in Coldwell University, there are some good live trainings, webinars, FAQs, and other tools to help you master these systems if that's what you need. But honestly, just go in there and keep clicking buttons and playing with it. We're trying to make it as easy as we can. We're trying to add as much content as we can. But there's going to be stuff that's uniquely you that we can't recreate and we can't do on your behalf. And that's what's going to really the templates we have are to get you started. The real conversion happens when you're a real human with them and they get to see an inside and part of you that they don't elsewhere, and you give them some meaningful content and information. So that is it for me. I'm going to just now kind of see if you have any questions, and if so, I'll be happy to answer them. Otherwise, thank you so much for your time, and I appreciate this. This is part of a series. So the productivity class, the farming class,